Uh, Jack, I want to talk to you about one scare which is there in India's traders' mind these days is algo trading. We always, India always looks at how US market has evolved, and we know that systematic rule-based algo trading is quite big in US. If I'm not wrong, it contributes almost 80% of the exchange liquidity, whereas in India, it is picking up quite fast in last 5 to 6 years. In fact, machine learning, AI, everything has come into Indian market as well, and we are finding it difficult to compete with robots, which is quite obvious. So one insecurity which Indian traders has that is this the right future? Am I into a right career? Because if robots are going to replace me, then it is going to be a tough thing for me. So could you give us a perspective that how it
Yeah,
evolved in US and probably the
sure.
same thing could eventually happen in India as well? And whether a discretionary trader will be able to survive in any kind of market scenario.
Yeah, well, certainly, we've had one of the big changes when I started out in the early 70s, from then to now. One of the dramatic changes has been, computerization. I mean, when I started out, we didn't have PCs. I remember the year before a year or two before I started my first job, to run to do anything, you had to, I remember being on an IBM 360, which was a room-sized computer that had the power, it had a fraction of the power probably of what a PC has nowadays. So, we've come a very, very long way. PCs then and come on until, common use until maybe, the early 80s probably. And then we had computers getting much more processing speed and supercomputers. So nowadays you do have that situation where you have some firms that have literally 100 quants with supercomputers, and so that's kind of a little bit intimidating. But and then there's artificial intelligence, which is its own thing, which is more a matter of computers learning, how learning from their experience, so to speak, how to improve the program itself. So that all is intimidating, and there are some successful players in that field. But a couple of things on that. First of all, let me just mention that when I went in to write this last book, I kind of thought, gee, I'm not going to find traders who will perform anything like the traders in my first book. Because
Hmm.
back that was in the 70s, that was before computing and all that. And you had some exceptional traders. But I thought nowadays, with all this computerization and all these quants, there wouldn't be that much of an edge. And ironically, some of the track records I uncovered, and remember, when I'm interviewing people, I'm looking for people who have traded for 10 years more, 10, 20. So it's not just a fly, it's not just a couple of lucky years. And quite a number of the traders in this book are probably as good, if not better, than anybody I've ever interviewed. So apparently, there are people out there that for long-term periods have been exceedingly successful. And they're all, I should say, they're all discretionary in this last book, with the exception of one trader. So apparently, just by empirical evidence, and of course, I've only found a dozen traders or interviewed that's not I didn't go through the universe of traders, right? There's lots of traders I don't know about that have been successful. So apparently, just from empirical observation, it is still possible, despite all this computerization and all this competition from quants, it's still possible for the discretionary trader, the solo guy. And these people I interviewed were basically solo traders, just one guy with a computer. It's like, and they weren't necessarily quants either. Some a little bit analytical, but generally not. So yes, so the answer empirically is yes, it's still possible. And the other thing I would say is to kind of contrast how markets are different. So a classic example is chess. So chess has a tremendous amount of combinations, and for there was a time where people thought, well, computers will never beat a master. So many years ago, we've passed a point where the best chess master of the day, like Magnus now or Kasparov in his day, or cannot even come close to competing with the with the AI computer, and just how sobering that could be in chat. Just to, give me an example is it's not just that. It's not just that, but also the computers will come up with these types of games that people just will never even imagine. The difference though with markets is that the markets are just astronomically more complex than chess. Why? Well, the big reason is, you have a lot more variables, okay? That's not the main one, but that's a big one. You have a lot more variables. So you think of all the countries involved, all the people involved with psychology, all the economic factors, on and on and on. It's just tremendous. If you just think of economics, you can think of 100 economic factors that might influence a market at one time or another, plus each market influencing the other market and so on. So there's a lot more variables. That's one thing. But the real kicker is in something like chess, the rules are defined. The knight is going to move 2 spaces in 1 space. The knight is never going to move diagonally, right? So it doesn't change the way it moves. And in the markets, that's not the case. The markets are really tough because some take equities and bonds. Sometimes they move together. Sometimes they move opposite. Sometimes they move completely independently. And so it's like the rules are always changing in how these different variables work, behave, and how they interact with each other. So that makes it just an exceedingly complex problem. So plus the psychology factor that's involved. So will it ever be? I would never say never, but apparently, despite all the computerization we have and the tremendous progress we've had in a lot of scientific fields and in what computers have been able to achieve, I think in trading we're still in a world where the individual trader can prosper if they have the talent.
Investments in the securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.